The only viable Blink subclass currently in the PvP meta is the Astrocyte vs Void Warlock. Blink in Destiny 1 used to be one of the strongest abilities in the game. Blink Hunters and Warlocks with shotguns dominated the meta. Blink in Destiny 2 got nerfed pretty hard, but Astrocyte vs manages to negate most of those nerfs and actually make it pretty potent in the Crucible. Now, through a leak, we know that Astrocyte is getting buffed next season in Season of the Deep. Usually I don't pay attention to speculation, but this set of leaks have all turned out to be true this season, so I'm very sure the ones for next season will also be true. And we know exactly what this buff is going to be. If you don't like spoilers, then this is the time to turn off the video. Today, I'm going to bring you a complete build ready for that buff, so you have an up-to-date Astrocyte verse build ready for next season. Trust me, I think it's really going to shake the meta up. Void Warlock in general is already super slept on. It has some of the best abilities for 1v1 encounters, and we have 4 ways to proc Devour so that we can chain kill streaks like no other build. Dim link for the build will be in my Discord, link for which will be in the comments or description below. Astrocyte Verse at the present moment already provides a whole host of buffs. It gives 25% increased blink distance, helping you to close down the gap. It decreases the cooldown for blink. It passively grants plus 30 airborne effectiveness, and it also gives you 100 handling to your weapons when you do blink. And in my eyes, the most important thing it does is that it doesn't remove your radar when you do blink, which is what normally happens when you blink without the exotic. Now, next season, with the buff to Astrocyte Verse, the leak suggests we'll be able to blink further and more frequently, and the most exciting bit is when we blink, we'll leave behind a burst of void damage that suppresses our opponents. Now, this could make blink one of the strongest abilities in the game. So many times I blink over supers to evade them. Well, from next season, it'll just straight up suppress them out of their supers. Moreover, you can use this against rushers to blink through them, or blink backwards and suppress them as you try and create some distance. The possibilities here are truly endless. The power of this buff will really depend on a couple of things: how large the area is which produces this effect, and how much the void effect damages for. If this comes out of the gate even slightly overtuned, you're going to see a whole lot more blink void warlocks in the Crucible. Suppression is a crazy strong ability, and to be able to suppress enemies just by blinking through them every couple of seconds could really be a meta-defining change next season. Now, this buff will also synergize with our aspects and fragments, and one fragment in particular that it will synergize really well with is Echo of Domineering. Now, what this does is when you suppress an enemy, it will give you a whole host of buffs: 30 mobility, 4% movement speed bonus, and it refills the magazine for your readied weapon. So along with the 100 handling buff that you get with blink, all these buffs combined will make you ready to shred your opponent after you blink suppress them. And then on top, when you kill that opponent, the fragment makes it so you generate a void breach guaranteed. And through our next fragment, Echo of Starvation, when we pick up said void breach, we get Devour. This build also generates orbs of power reliably, which I'll talk about later, so that you can get Devour through that way as well. So very quickly we can turn around the tide of battle using a single blink, suppressing our enemy, getting access to a ton of buffs, and then carrying on that momentum onto the next kill with Devour. In terms of our aspect choices, we are obviously going to be using Child of the Old Gods, whereby whenever we cast our Rift, we create a Void Soul which tracks towards an enemy that we damage and applies a 10-meter radius draining field which slows our enemies and weakens them. This is probably one of the strongest 1v1 abilities out there. It's an absolute nuisance for the opponent to deal with and can shift a losing battle into a winning one. Our second aspect choice is a bit more nuanced here. I decided to go for Feed the Void, whereby Void ability kills proc Devour. Why did I do that? Well, because this is a blink build and our melee is used way more than our grenade, and although Chaos Accelerant combined with Axiom Bolts is very effective, I just didn't find myself using my grenade that much in a blink focused build. And Jesus Christ, Pocket Singularity, the Void Warlock melee, is probably one of my favorite melee abilities out there, so any aspect that further strengthens that melee is a huge bonus. So Pocket Singularity shoots out a ball of void energy that tracks enemies super aggressively and detonates, causing them to be knocked back. Now, the range of this melee is pretty absurd, as is the tracking. Even more, for the first second your enemy is hit by this effect, they can't melee you back. Honestly, because of the knockback and because enemies can't melee you back for that first second, you can even sometimes open with the melee and win the duel. With Feed the Void, any pocket singularity kill now also gives us Devour. Let's go over the rest of the Void 3.0 build. For my super, I run Nova Bomb Cataclysm. Nova Warp is fairly easy to shoot down and has a much longer cooldown, and I prefer this Nova Bomb to the other one as the little Void Balls that come out of the initial big one can really help you to get cleanup kills. I run Healing Rift over Empowering Rift, which is great for dueling and regaining health around corners, Blink, Pocket Singularity, and then for my grenade, I run Axion Bolts. These things, even without Chaos Accelerant, track pretty aggressively and hit for 100 damage. For my aspects, like I said, I run Child of the Old Gods and Feed the Void so we get the maximum fragment slots full. We talked about Echo of Domineering and Echo of Starvation. I then run Echo of Leeching. Pocket Singularity will proc Devour through Feed the Void, but when it's on cooldown, it's nice to get health regeneration from your regular melee. If you don't want to use this, then you could go for something like Echo of Vigilance, which gives overshields when you kill enemies on low health, but honestly losing an extra 10 recovery on top of the minus 10 recovery from Echo of Starvation felt like a little bit too much for a Warlock. And then finally, I run Echo of Dilation for better radar and crouch walk speed as well as the stat boosts. For my stat distribution, the number one priority here is 100 recovery to minimize rift cooldown, which therefore maximizes the uptime for Child of the Old Gods. If you've watched any of my other PvP build videos, I also mention how important 100 recovery is for minimizing downtime in between engagements, which helps you win 1v1 duels more often. Then I actually went for strength. I wanted maximum uptime on my pocket singularity ability so that I could blink shotgun with more confidence. Then aim for discipline so that you can get your Axion bolts more often. If you use chaos accelerant instead of feed the void, then prioritize discipline higher than strength. Finally go for intellect, resilience, and then finally mobility in that order. For my armor mods, on my class item I ran Reaper so that whenever I killed an enemy after deploying a rift, I could spawn an orb of power and then proc Devour through Echo of Starvation. Honestly, with Feed the Void, Echo of Starvation, and Echo of Domineering, melee kills, grenade kills, void breaches, and orbs of power all proc Devour, so it's super easy to go on kill streaks. I also run one utility kickstart mod to minimize that cooldown even further. For my boots, I run one Absolution and two Insulation mods so that when we pick up the Orb of Power, we minimize our Rift cooldown even more, which means we get more Void Soul uptime. Then I run the relevant Unflinching, Dexterity, and Target mods. In terms of weapons, this build works well with virtually any short range weapon, shotguns, SMGs, even rapid fire fusion rifles, but I found that duality paired extremely well with this build. Sometimes you just don't blink enough to cover the gap, and so that extra distance on the slug shot just helped when my opponent was backpedaling, and sometimes you over blink, and so that hip fire shotgun shot really helps. So there you have it, my Astrocyte Warlock build that is absolutely ready for next season's buff. We have blink, suppression, weaken, devour on demand with this build, and it's seriously going to dominate both quick play and game modes like trials and comp. If you enjoyed what I talked about today, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Destiny builds, both PvP and PvE. I'm Mr. Ronnet, and that's it for today. Peace out, guys.